Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in internet shitlords, and today I am talking about something I did not expect to be talking about in this channel, Tomb Raider. That is a video game, and as you know, I've never ever played video games, or almost. I played some very, very old video games back in the 1980s, but in my adult life, that was when I was a kid, but now in my adult life I have had no interest in playing video games, right? But I do have an interest in tabletop RPGs, and because they are making a Tomb Raider tabletop RPG, I suddenly find myself having to speak about it. But don't get too excited if you're a Tomb Raider fan. It's going to be absolutely horrible. In fact, the Tomb Raider RPG will be basically about you killing people like the Lara Croft of the video games. But before I get to that, I wanted to make a couple of little questions here. So the first thing I would like to know from you, my audience, especially those of you who are my fans, especially those of you who have purchased Lion and Dragon or Dark Albion, or also those who've been thinking about doing so. So I have had an offer from a certain publisher to do a special kind of edition, a combined edition, where there would be the Lion and Dragon and Albion content with a few little changes and with maybe some additional material, all in one book. It would have all new art, it would have all new layout. And I wanted to know what you guys think of that. Would that be something that you would be interested in getting? An omnibus volume of Lion and Dragon combined with Dark Albion. So please tell me what you think about that. And then, well, apart from that, if you're here for the first time, be sure to, after you're finished watching this video, to subscribe if you like this video, to share it anywhere you can share it, and check out in the link in the description below, you can find links to all of my products, like Lion and Dragon, Medieval Authentic OSR role-playing, and the various settings for Lion and Dragon, like Dark Albion and Sword and Caravan, supplements like Social Encounters, which allow you to create a not skill-based social interaction system for OSR play, or toolkits like the Gonzo Fantasy Companion, where you can make all kinds of really weird fantasy material for you to add to your own campaign or to use in the Last Sun campaign, which is another one of my settings. So be sure to check all of those out, and especially check out the Pundit Files, which are coming out now every 2 weeks in the Red Room store. The current Pundit Files is number 9, which is the 1930s Invisible College campaign. So it lets you run my occult modern OSR game, the Invisible College, but back in the 1930s, in the pre-war years, where you get to engage in political intrigues and espionage and magical duels in distant parts of the world, trying to obtain artifacts and make plans against the rising dark powers of the world in that period. So if you check that out, Invisible College number 9, Pundit Files number 9, the Invisible College 30s campaign, you will also get a half-off discount on Wretched Interbellum, which is the Red Room's sourcebook on 1930s pulp action. So you've got a great deal there, and it's all, well, the Pundit Files 9 is only still $3.50. Okay, so for $3.50 you can have it. So be sure to check all that out. Now, back to the topic, Tomb Raider. Some of you have no doubt heard this probably on Twitter or X, but maybe in other places. So, from what I understand, now here's the part, I'm going to be very clear about the things I don't know a lot about. I don't know a lot about the video game industry, right, for the most part. What I know is that the video game industry has passed over to a particular company that was not the original company that did the very first Tomb Raider game, or I think most of the really successful ones, but passed it over to some other company. And that company has had some people think are pretty dubious, right, in terms of their excessive wokeness. And that company now has ended up giving the license for making a tabletop RPG to Evil Hat Productions. So Evil Hat, if you aren't familiar with them, and there's many reasons why you wouldn't be, because they've become much less important and much less relevant in recent years. They're a company that I think must have started in the early 2000s, maybe the late 90s, I don't know, but the early 2000s. They started getting known in the early 2000s, having produced a number of games that were, I think, based on the Fate system, which is itself a variant of the Fudge system that was invented in the 90s. And at first they were okay. They always had this kind of air of pretentiousness to them, but there's some people like those kinds of games, right? And then they ended up basically going completely political activist wild, and like they were one of the really early adopters of that, right? They were very hard left-wing politics lunatics who were really pushing that, like alongside a couple of other, like Green Ronin, right? A couple of other gaming companies that were suddenly all about introducing leftist politics into the RPG hobby. They basically faded away into obscurity around the time that 5th edition came out. The last really notable product that they have done, and notable is very, kind of notable, it's kind of like the last product that was really hyped even by their own leftist propaganda networks, was a game called Thirsty Sword Lesbians, which is a game where you play violent lesbians that are in love with each other, right? And that's basically that. That's what they're all about, right? I mean, Evil Hat was always the type of company, even before it went like politically woke, because before there was a political wokeness that was like demode in the RPG world, there was already this kind of pretentiousness that was demode, right? And so like that started with like Vampire, which was all pretentious over claiming to be like a superior form of role-playing to Dungeons and Dragons. But then very quickly there was like a higher elitist tier of people that were like, oh no, World of Darkness is trash, right? We're indie gamers and we're making these experimental games and stuff like that, right? Like and Evil Hat was completely inside that line and tradition, right? So for a long time they have made games that are never meant to be played. These are games like Thirsty Sword Lesbians. It's not a game you're meant to play. It's a game you're meant to purchase and then show off the fact of that purchase to everyone so that everyone knows that you have the right politics. Okay, that's its only reason for existing. That's what it's for. And it sure looks like what they're planning to do, having gotten suddenly the license to do Tomb Raider, is something very similar. Because what they have stated, they've made very clear that the Tomb Raider RPG, like, okay, here's the thing. They're as usual, they want to take a beloved item and they want to deconstruct it. They want to tear down the very thing that made it special. Say that thing was bad. You're bad for liking it, and so we're punishing you with this product that literally turns the thing you like into something you hate. Okay? And that's what they're doing here. So Lara Croft is going to be in the game, right? But it's not the Lara Croft of the earlier video games, right? In the earlier video games, Lara Croft was an archaeologist. She went into tombs. She obtained artifacts, sometimes that had magical powers and things like that. This is as far as I know. I've never played the game again, but you could correct me if I'm wrong, right? And she would obtain these items to safeguard them, and for the the good of humanity, right? In the new version that Evil Hat plans to put out, Lara Croft will have realized that she was in fact a horrible, horrible person, because preserving ancient artifacts is racist, because it's colonialist, that you're going into these people's traditional lands and stealing their things that they haven't taken care of. So this is you don't have a right to do that. Yeah. So instead, Lara Croft will now become a seeker of truth. And what is the seeking of truth? Well, it's to defend the truth of indigenous cultures, right? And to protect those indigenous cultures against people that would attempt to use colonialist methods to steal from them and occupy their land, right? So that is what the game is going to be about. So literally, Lara Croft becomes the exact opposite of what she was. You know, she was someone who was obviously a very skilled, capable person who also had an interest in protecting the human tradition, the entire human treasury of antiquity from degradation and destruction, into a moron who now wants to kill people that stand in her way, right? So like the player characters in this game presumably are part of Lara Croft's team in some wider sense, and their job is to kill Tomb Raiders, right? That's the job you're doing in Tomb Raider, the RPG, right? You're killing people like what Lara Croft used to be, right? People that are trying to do archaeological explorations in order to obtain and protect artifacts, right? And of course, some of them might be trying to rob artifacts, right? And all of that. And there's also like there's probably going to be, like the evil people that want to manipulate these supernaturally powerful artifacts for their own purposes and what have you, right? But the point is that the entire reason they are doing this game is to tell you that if you liked any of the Lara Croft games until now, you're a bad person and you deserve to be punished. And I think that's probably true of both Crystal Dynamics, which is the company I think that's their name, that are currently in charge of Tomb Raider. But it's also very clearly the goal of Evil Hat, right? So, in order to do this, since this isn't the end, it gets worse, right? In order to do this, Evil Hat has hired on a number of contributors, almost all of which are, of course, BIPOC people, and almost all of which are, of course, LGBT plus Q whatever people. Among those notables, there is one that is named Sahoni. So important that it's like he's got a single name, basically. Sahoni. And Sahoni is someone who identifies as a furry. He identifies as a wolf furry. Okay. And they are, this person, I don't know if it's they, them, or whatever they are, they're apparently claiming that they had a large amount of influence over how it's going to be in the game, right? And this person, I'm quoting from something that was shared on Twitter that is not from Twitter, I think it's from some kind of a furry site, because this person is very clearly a furry. That right there should probably tell you everything you need to know, but still. He says here, I think the biggest goal was never to fix her, that is to say, Lara Croft, because that's not something you can do, and it's a bad way to work with it. And put her in a place to tell new types of stories that might be healthier, relationships with others, and recognizing the human element pulp likes to scrape over, right? So, I mean, Tomb Raider is clearly a pulp game, right? It's in the same fashion as Indiana Jones. Lara Croft is a kind of female Indiana Jones. And the woke crowd despise pulp, right? Because it is pulp is a genre that was kind of an exaggerated peak of masculine culture in the early part of the 20th century, that showed this idea of like individual heroes cutting their own path, doing their own thing, succeeding through their own merit, and not being afraid to in the process do both some serious violence against people who deserve it and also to push for the agendas, you could say, of the virtues of Western civilization, you know. And so they really despise it. And he says here, I think the goal that stays honest to the earliest concepts of the character in the past and has stayed consistent throughout her depictions in games and comics. I don't understand what he meant by that, but apparently he claims that he's played, that what Baby Me played Tomb Raider 2 on the PC for hours and hours. So on Blue Sky, he says, I'm saying that he's saying that he wants the game to be an anti-colonial game, and he says that I'm saying anti-colonial, not decolonial, because the tenets of decolonialism require concrete action and actually push against the idea of symbolic and hollow gestures. My game is a game. I can talk about racism in academia, colonialism. Remember, this is a guy with a picture of a fox humanoid in his in his profile telling you this, right? I can talk about racism in academia, colonialism, and the value of intangible culture, but that's not work. I can introduce ideas and ask people to stop, consider, and listen, but that's not the work. At most, it's a discussion. That has value by a measure, but it ain't the work. It's not concrete. Okay, just in case you're wondering, the work and the difference between anti-colonialism and decolonialism. Anti-colonialism is an intellectual position where you are opposed to the colonialist actions of someone else, but it means you're not actually doing anything. Decolonialism is taking action. If you want to understand what decolonialism is like, well, basically every time that there's a mass murder of people, especially if it's white people or Jews, that's hailed as a decolonialization act, right? October 7th was a decolonialization act. Yeah, this is the people who say colonialism are all in the tacit agreement that eventually what has to happen is a series of genocides, right? That are genocides against the people that they consider the colonizers. So this is the sort of person that is writing this game and what they're advocating for, okay? And he's saying that his own things are just not enough. Like him doing this Tomb Raider book, it's not enough compared to what has to be done, right? But it's the best he can do, I guess. Here's some of the official now language of the Tomb Raider RPG from an article that's called Tomb Raider Series to Escape Its Colonialist Past. British adventurer Lara Croft will transition from being a raider of tombs to a seeker of truth as Evil Hat Productions and Crystal Dynamics seek to refine the Tomb Raider series in order to escape a history wounded by colonialism. So let me make one thing clear here about colonialism. It's not really... I mean, there are individual people that might have been hurt by colonialism, sure. Or you could say, theoretically, groups of individual people that were, to differing degrees, hurt by colonialism, right? But colonialism itself was not inherently bad or inherently good, right? The people have migrated throughout the world all the time, right? There are very few places where you can say that some territory belongs to a single person or a single group of people. I mean, except Israel, which obviously belongs to the Jewish people, but apart from that, there are places there. What we're seeing now in the West is a type of colonialism that is happening against the West, right? Of this intentional mass migration, and you're welcome to fight against it, right? And that could be a good thing, but why is it that it's not going to be a good thing to have it succeed? Is because what is that wave going to bring, right? Is it going to better civilization or worsen it, right? In most places that the West colonized, it brought in ideas like human rights. The concept of human rights didn't exist before the Western Enlightenment, right? It brought in the idea that maybe you shouldn't have your wife set fire to when in your funeral, like it brought in the idea that slavery is a bad thing, and should probably be stopped. All of these are Western concepts that were invented there, right? So this idea that colonialism was fundamentally harmful is nonsense, right? Like in the longer term, colonialism had an incredibly effective set of improvements for the human race as a whole. Western colonialism. The problem is who's doing the colonizing, right? But okay, it's the history wounded by colonialism, according to an excerpt from the Tomb Raider Shadows of Truth RPG book. So this is now quoting directly from the book, by the way. It says, raiding as depicted in the original Tomb Raider games and stories involves going to ancient tombs and historical sites of different civilizations and acquiring artifacts. It operates on the assumption of finders keepers that grants raiders with the means and the drive to claim ownership of the artifacts, regardless of whether they have any historical or cultural claim to the treasure. Okay, let me tell you something now about the context of colonialism with archaeological treasures, all right? Because, there's a whole ton of treasures now in the British Museum, in the Louvre, and in various other museums and institutes and universities throughout the West, that those artifacts, had they been left where they were, would have in the intervening period been unquestionably destroyed. Some of them would have been destroyed due to neglect. Some of them would have been destroyed due to abandonment. Some of them would have been directly destroyed. Entire areas of archaeological value have been destroyed to create dams or to build new cities or things like that. Or they would have been intentionally destroyed by religious fanatics who do not want to preserve cultural artifacts of a religion other than their own. So the fact that the West is so sophisticated, that developed this idea of archaeology, of studying the past, and that it has such a universalist perspective, that it values the archaeological treasures of other cultures and wants to preserve those so we can know more about who those people were, and therefore be able to preserve them as part of our human heritage. That is an unbelievably advanced civilizational trait. One that most civilizations don't have, even to this day, right? To the degree that they do, they might have so for their own past, but not necessarily for the past of others, or not as much. So this is a person arguing against what is in fact the more enlightened perspective, the perspective that is a perspective of wanting to preserve our human future, right? Our human past into the future. They continue saying, later games released in this franchise have started the work of addressing this by having Lara Croft acknowledge her past mistakes and show respect for the cultures and communities she comes into contact with. I will remind you, this is a freaking dungeon crawling game, basically, and not in the sense of D&D, but and the idea that there's this demand that they have to become politically messaging is ridiculous to begin with, right? But here we are. So they say here, Lara no longer will decorate her mantle with mythic artifacts. As a raider, she prioritizes seeking out the truth, which makes no sense at all, right? Why would she be called a Tomb Raider if she's seeking out the truth, right? What does that mean, seeking out the truth? What truth? What truth are they even goddamn talking about, right? These people don't even believe in truth, right? But they decide that is like the most vague description of what they do, right? Oh, I seek out the truth by going into tombs and getting treasures, and then not keeping those treasures myself, presumably, but we don't know what we do with them. Is that what it is? Much of this game is inspired by her humanity, struggle with heroism, and her tenacity. We seek to continue his work alongside crystal dynamics, blah, blah, blah. So there's an image here. The truth is hidden, the truth is dangerous, and in the end, the power of truth is what we make it, and it shows some of the characters, like the hunter, the change, the companion. Those are, I guess, archetypes. Tomb Raider Shadow of Truth will be an 8.5 times 11 full-color hardcover containing rules, advice, and adventures for seekers and keepers alike. And again, in short, from what I have seen of what it's saying there, yeah, so there's a Dicebreaker reported, official Lara Croft tabletop RPG Shadows of Truth pits your team against would-be Tomb Raiders, right? That's literally what it says in the idea is your team is a group of truth seekers that are there to stop evil colonizers from stealing cultural artifacts from these proud and noble and absolutely perfect non-white societies that have been so horribly brutalized over the years by the creation of things like electricity and indoor plumbing that the West has given them. You know, so this is what the game is going to be about. But it really what it's going to be about is two things: is for Evil Hat to be able to sell this to ultra liberals who feel guilty that when they were 7 they played Tomb Raider, right? And second is for them to be able to horribly insult you and humiliate you if you liked Tomb Raider. That's their goal, and they're going to love it when well, it's already happening on Twitter. People are protesting about this game. They love that because now they can say, look, see, these are the white supremacists. These are the evil people. They like a game that was fun, a fun dungeon romp, and that means that they're basically 1930s Germans, right? And that we can do anything we want to them. Yeah, I think though the Evil Hat may have missed the boat here. That it is now current year. It's 2024, and in 2024 we're not taking any of that bullshit anymore, right? We fired the president of Harvard's gone. She was an imbecile, right? That only got her position because of the color of her skin. We're not into that kind of segregation anymore, Evil Hat. We're not into this whole the whole thing. It's just not working, you know. You're a year too late at least, probably 2 years. So I don't know what they're hoping to achieve from all this, but basically that's what I wanted you to know. I'm sorry to anyone out there who is a Tomb Raider fan, because of course this is them wasting an opportunity. However, I have heard that one of the people that was in the studio that makes Tomb Raider at one point made another Tomb Raider RPG, and that this was sort of done and I think it was an in-house thing or something like that. But anyways, I believe I have just shared on Twitter earlier today a link to that RPG that you could then choose to download. And I've been told by some people that it's actually a good, truthful emulator of what Tomb Raider probably should be in RPG form, which it doesn't really, it's like Tomb Raider, from what I remember, you're like trying to jump to avoid little traps and stuff. It's almost more a Mario game than it is an RPG. It's not Neverwinter Nights or something, but anyways, whatever it is you're doing in Tomb Raider, this game is bound to be better than whatever Evil Hat makes, because everything Evil Hat makes is horrible. It's absolutely horrible. So I guess that's everything I wanted to tell you. So check out my Twitter account if you want to find the link to the actually good Tomb Raider game. And if you share this video anywhere where people are going to be interested by it, or wherever they're going to be pissed off about it, and spread the word about what's going on with Evil Hat and with the Tomb Raider RPG, and how the incredible irony that they've literally they've gone as far as that, right? This is like doing a Call of Cthulhu game where you play the cultists, right? It's that same level of thing, right? And where in fact the cultists, where Cthulhu is good. It's a good thing that Cthulhu's going to destroy the world because humans are terrible anyways, right? So that's like the literal political message of the creators. You know, it's like that. It's that sort of a complete reversal. You're playing a game where your characters are meant to hunt and kill the Tomb Raiders, the archaeologists. It's madness. So anyways, share it anywhere you can share it, and check out all of my products at the same time, Lion and Dragon and Dark Albion and Sword and Caravan, and all of my Pundit Presents series and the Pundit Files on the Red Room. The Pundit Files on the Red Room. They're only $3.50. All right, thank you very much. Currently smoking. This is a Neerup Hawkbill plus Argento Roots.